ES Audio.
From the Evening Standard in London, I'm Rochelle Travers, and this is The Leader. Tributes are continuing to pour in for the much-loved TV and radio star Paul O'Grady, who has died at the age of 67.
Now, this grill business, when I heard you taking your grill, I thought you were talking about a George Foreman. I did, because I didn't know. I thought, oh, maybe you don't like the cooking over there, you know, a bit of sausage and bacon in your bedroom. No, I'm not crawling on my belly like a reptile and saying thank you, because I friggin' deserve this, I tell you what I...
The Queen Consort said she was deeply saddened, and his warm heart and infectious humour lit up the lives of so many. ITV presenter Lorraine Kelly said O'Grady was funny, fearless, brave, kind and wise. In a post on Instagram, musician Sir Elton John highlighted Paul's campaign work for LGBTQ+ rights, saying, "Thank you for all the joy you brought to the world, Paul. You went places nobody had gone before, and we will miss you very much." Here to talk about Paul O'Grady's incredible rise to fame and career is Robert Dex, the Evening Standard's arts correspondent.
It was announced in the wee small hours this morning that he died very suddenly last night. Beyond that, we don't know a great deal. I mean, he'd always been quite open about having fairly serious health problems. I think he'd had several heart attacks going. I mean, he was only 67, but he'd had several heart attacks going back sort of 20 odd years, and he got COVID recently, and again, in a very Paul O'Grady way, said it nearly finished him off. So I think his health probably hadn't been great for a while, but, you know, we don't know the details, to be honest.
Let's look back at his incredible career now. How did Paul rise to fame?
There's a brilliant list of the jobs he did that I think we should read out. So he worked behind the bar. He worked for the DHSS. He was a clerk at Liverpool Magistrates Court. He was a social worker in Camden Town. He worked in Yates's Wine Lodge, apparently. He was an accountant in an abattoir. And those things sound nothing to do with the amazing career he had. But actually, I think that's really the reason he was so successful, because he'd lived a bit of a life before he did all this. And I think that came through in his act. I mean, he was still working as a social worker in Camden, where you can imagine having to deal with some pretty serious stuff and some really heartbreaking stuff when he started doing his drag act. I think he sort of tried a few different things and sort of worked in like holiday resorts over in Spain and did all the gay bars in London and Liverpool till it sort of affected that Lily Savage persona, that sort of foul-mouthed Scouse woman that I think was partly based on his own mum, I think. Obviously, it was one of those things, he worked the clubs, got bigger and bigger and bigger. It's a very old-fashioned way into fame, really. It's like an old school comedian way. But yeah, no, I mean, he worked his way up from the bottom, basically. I mean, he was just very, very sharp, very, very funny, brilliant comic timing, the sort of sharpness and comic timing that comes from working in clubs and pubs where you're either being ignored on stage or you're being barracked by the audience, and you learn to deal with it. And then, you know, you start getting TV appearances. He was a natural on TV. I mean, it's a funny thing to say, but one of the hardest things on TV is to just be yourself. And ironically, he was being somebody else, Lily Savage. But he was very comfortable on TV as either Lily or as himself. And it was probably inevitable that he ended up sort of doing, I mean, people call it light entertainment, stuff like hosting Blankety Blank, and, you know, he had a show on Radio 2. But stuff like that is very, very hard to do effortlessly. And he did it effortlessly.
Obviously, we have to talk about Lily Savage. How groundbreaking was that character for British drag?
I think it sort of depends how old you are, which might sound like a silly answer. Lots of people have said how groundbreaking it was. I mean, I grew up watching telly in the 80s where men dressed as women making smutty gags probably wasn't that unusual. It is a tradition that, you know, it's not just arrived out of nowhere. But what he became massive. I'm sure he watered down his act and his language slightly to, you know, to get on TV before the watershed. But the difference he was massively visible while still being a drag act. He was massively visible while still being sort of political. And he was on daytime TV. You know, there's clips being shared online of him on This Morning with Richard and Judy, watched by, you know, X millions of people, 11:30 in the morning. And that was the trick. He brought it into daytime TV.
What are some of the other highlights of his career? I
actually think the big thing was when he got his chat show, because it wasn't Lily Savage, it was Paul O'Grady. And having risen up his career, you know, doing that one act as a character, a very particular character, a very recognisable character, to have enough in his locker to then actually come out and do a show as himself is quite a big deal. Do you know what I mean? Because it would have been very easy just to keep the wig on, the high heels, and do the act over and over again. But it turned out that he was a naturalist himself as well, and that he was funny, he was sharp, he was good with guests. In the way that people often are, he was sort of behind the aggressive comedy act and the sort of fairly biting wit. He was obviously a bit of a softie. I mean, from where he started to where he ended up presenting a show about dogs on ITV, mainstream TV. But he was obviously just a very nice, warm, genuine person who talked about things he cared about. It's quite surreal, but heck of a career.
He was also known for charity and campaigning work. What are some of the causes that were close to his heart?
Well, I mean, we've had one of the very first tributes we got was from Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, saying that, how much they're going to miss him. And he'd sort of, in a weird way, become the public face of it. He talked about it so much. He was always there. So they're going to miss him massively. But then you could say, the other end of the scale, if you like, having a tribute from Peter Tatchell. Now, Peter Tatchell is basically a one-man gay rights campaign machine. And again, I mean, it's not something I knew. He said that, I mean, the work he does is funded by people who help him. And one of those people who helped him was Paul O'Grady, who, as far as I can tell, never shouted about it or really told anyone, but very quietly helped fund the work Peter Tatchell does.
And finally, how do you think he'll be remembered?
With a great deal of affection. I think that's already clear. He'd become one of those people that was part of the furniture, wasn't he? Whether it was on TV or popping up on the radio. The minute you heard his voice, he had a very distinctive voice and a distinctive approach. You knew, you didn't have to think, oh, who's that talking? You knew exactly who it was. I wouldn't be surprised. It'd be one of those things that as the tributes come out and as more people hear about his death, that we'll hear some stories about his generosity and his character and what a warm, clearly decent guy he was.
Let's go to the ads. Stay there to hear from Battersea Dogs and Cats Home about Paul O'Grady's impact and what it was like filming For the Love of Dogs with the TV icon. Welcome back. One of Paul O'Grady's big hits was For the Love of Dogs on ITV.
This is how I wake up.
I don't want a bunny or a kitty.
Why do they always sit on me?
I don't want a parrot that talks.
Joining me now is Battersea Dogs and Cats Home's head of Canine Behaviour, Ali Taylor.
Oh yeah, I remember when I first met him. Paul has just been a complete and utter hoot since he worked with Battersea. He's not only is he fun, and he's so approachable, with the staff and even people that were coming in, but you could see that genuine love for dogs. You would be talking to him for a couple of minutes and he would have disappeared because he would have spotted a dog that he's fallen in love with time and time again. I first met him when he came in, being introduced to do this the programme For the Love of Dogs. And to be honest, we never expected it to be such a hit. We thought it would be like a one series and that was it. But everyone just got on board with it. And, the public just absolutely loved it and loved him.
How much of an impact has Paul had on Battersea?
Paul has had such an effect on Battersea, the support that we get. And for me, I think it's just making people aware about rescue animals and the followers that we have as a result of Paul. This is all Paul's doing. And I think what he managed to do was show the public and people, just some of the work that we do. Because prior to that, I think people used to just think, we brought animals in and just rehomed them. But you've just seen so much more with the help from him.
Do you have a favourite memory with him?
I have too many funny moments with Paul. Actually, every time I think about him, I just sort of like in my head, I just laugh. It's just, honestly just so many things. There was a time when a dog managed to throw up on him, which made him sick. So we were just constantly laughing over that. I actually did Coronation Street with him, and that was just me following him around and him going into the cafe and the Rovers, pretending he was serving me drinks. Just so many really good memories. He just made filming with him just so much fun, and you just didn't know what to expect. He was up front. He just said what he felt he needed to say. And I think the other remarkable thing about him was he'd just speak to anyone. He actually did nearly make me wee once because he was just, everything went wrong in the shoot. And it's just, when you just laugh and you can't stop laughing and you're just crying with laughter, that's how most of our shoots went. And we would have to keep repeating them over and over again. It would be like the 10th time and people would be getting like really annoyed with us. But yeah, everything about him was just great. He was just, I'd like to say a good friend as well.
What do you think his legacy will be?
For me, I think his legacy will be not just Battersea, it's just everything that he did, rescue and other animals, and actually just making people smile. And for me, about being real. But obviously, we'll always miss him in the dog rescue world.
You can read more about Paul O'Grady's life and career on our website, standard.co.uk. And that's it from The Leader. This podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.